Hi, today I want to talk about pedal settings. I know it can be very overwhelming even for real life players to come into the game and to figure out how to set up a pedal that feels good. So in this video I'm going to show you a couple of basic options that you can start from. I will be showing you 4 different options. The beginner pedal, a control pedal, a pedal based mostly on speed, and a pedal that kind of tries to reproduce the feel of carbon. To download my pedal settings, I will show you just quickly how you can do it. If you want more details, you can go to the how to download my drills in-game video. I'll put a link into the description. It's basically the same thing. Just select pedal settings instead of ball machine. For all of these settings, I have lap bounce data on to make it a little bit easier to compare them. Remember, it's just a starting point, so the idea is that you take this and then add a little bit of bounce, add a little bit of spin, or take away some of the spin, and play a little bit around with the throw as well. For beginners though, it's probably best to just start with a beginner pedal and only think of those things a little bit more down the road. Let's talk a little bit about the beginner pedal. I purposely put the bounce at a low level, and I will explain to you why that is. If your bounce is low, you will become more dependent on brushing the ball well. This doesn't mean that the pedal doesn't simulate good rubbers, it just simulates a slower bat in itself. So this means that you can still play quality strokes, but when you play flat, you're not going to get a lot of help. So it's basically a slower wood pedal. This will also help you avoid strokes that are more suited to tennis, for example, because tennis, you don't really have a high throw when you play the ball. The ball comes out kind of straight. You can add spin to it, but on a relatively flat approach to the ball. In table tennis, when you approach the ball and you want to spin it, you can actually close the angle a lot more than you can do in tennis. But you will never learn that if you start doing the same strokes as in tennis with a very fast blade, because it will feel like you can do it anyway. So that's why we make it a lower bounce as well, so you don't get those things mixed up and you can really focus on spin. So using this bat will teach you almost automatically to produce more topspin and more backspin, because you will need them to make the ball land and to make your strokes a little bit more aggressive. These settings are also very good for serving because the ball doesn't fly off, so it allows you to generate more spin. It is also very good for the short game, even though it is still bouncier than most real life pedals in that setup. Having a slower blade and having more emphasis on spin versus speed will create a little bit more margin of error when you play the ball. So it will be a little bit easier to make the ball land. Playing with a slower blade also helps you avoid holding back on your strokes, because sometimes when you play with a very fast blade from the beginning, the ball is just flying off and you start making your strokes smaller instead of spinnier, for example, and then you start holding back instead of using all of your power in your strokes. The weaker side of this, of course, is that it rewards bigger strokes, which is good for feeling, but it might make you a little bit slower. So to make sure that you don't fall into that trap, I always advise to play with the advanced drills at the highest speed setting, normal speed basically, and use that to keep an eye on your recovery time, to make sure that when you do a stroke, you're ready to play the next stroke as well. Now, when you play a really big attack and you know that you're doing that, you can do a bigger stroke and then be a little bit out of position if you know that it's going to be final, or you hope that it's going to be final. But for your normal topspin strokes, you should be able, even the strong ones, you should be able to do them continuously at a decent pace to make sure that you can use them in a real game. For the real life players, let me show you more or less what you can do to find your settings in the game. Bounce you can simulate by just playing the ball straight up, basically. It decides the speed of the ball when you play flat. Throw is basically the same as in real life. It decides on the angle the ball will exit the bat. So if throw is 1, it basically works like a short pimple rubber. Like there's almost no grip on the ball. It doesn't pull the ball up, even though in the game you can still produce a lot of spin with it. It needs to be more than 1 if you want to play with something that resembles inverted rubbers. Spin is actually a little bit hard to test without an actual table. Right now it's kind of a mixture between grip and lateral restitution. Lateral restitution being the way the rubber gives into the ball when it hits the well, when the ball hits the rubber. So a little bit the catapult effect. And it's a little bit too strong in general, so that's why keeping spin low is not that bad of an option, because it will feel more realistic. Having it really high up can be very much fun though. Now spin itself, the value itself, how I use it is to, when I'm playing and I feel that the arc of the ball is too deep or too far or too high, then I add a little bit of spin so it dips down sooner. You don't need a high spin value to produce a lot of spin. That's a misconception, because if your spin is a little bit lower, the ball will not fly off as fast and you have more time to put in more of your own power without losing control. So actually when you play with lower spin, it might actually become easier to produce more spin, if that makes any sense to you. So now I will explain very quickly what my other options are, because the basic paddle is the most important one I think for people to start with. Even real life players can pick it up and start playing and they will feel comfortable with it. Alright, so the control paddle is very similar to the basic beginner paddle, but it has a little bit more bite to it, so it's a little bit faster. It's a very easy next step up. So if you start with beginner paddle and you want to go with something a little bit faster, go for control. It's very close to my current setup, so it means control. It's not a bad option even if you play at a higher level. It's very good for strong forehands, like I said before. It gives you the space to add a lot of your own speed and spin to the ball, so it allows you to put a lot of power in your shots. Next up is the speed setup. If you have good quality strokes, this is not a bad option. Mostly also if you have small strokes, compact strokes, this can help you give your strokes a little bit extra punch. But like I said before, don't try to play with this if your strokes are not good yet, because you will become too dependent on it. It's a very good option for a backhand, for example. A backhand can use a little bit extra power most of the time, because you have a little bit less space. So basically this setup is very good for counter players with smaller strokes. In the game you can see ProtoTVR, for example, playing with something quite similar to this. And last but not least, I put in carbon blades because a lot of real life players play with it. So this carbon blade is not the fastest setup, but it has a lower throw and also a little bit more of a straight curve, which should feel a little bit more like carbon. But just take this as a starting point. Make sure first of all when you spin up the ball that the throw feels right. It might even be lower than what I set up. And then afterwards try to make sure that the ball kind of lands where you expect it to land. So then add maybe a little bit more spin or take it away. There's a lot of carbon blades that try to make the throw higher. So if you have a blade like that, you can go very close to the wooden setup and the control setup. But try to compare it to a real life pad, because you'll probably notice it's gonna have a lower throw. So basically this is it. I hope this helps you out a little bit. I know that it could have helped me out in the beginning as well, to just get my first feeling of the game and feel what it was like and how much it was like real life. I hope this does that for you. Basically I'm not doing much more than showing you paddles that already have some throw added to them. Alright, good luck.